Hey, Nonfiction Branders, it's me, DP, and guess what? I screwed up. Yep, that's right. This fantastic conversation with George B. Thomas went on for 37 minutes before I realized I had the wrong mic plugged into my USB interface into my MacBook Pro. Consequently, the audio you hear from me is actually coming from the internal microphone on my MacBook Pro, with the fans going 100%. So it sounds pretty poor. And I had two choices. One, scrap the whole conversation and say, George, I'm sorry, let's do this again. Or take what's there, keep the content, but to apologize for the quality of my voice during this first podcast and maybe even into next week's podcast as well. Sorry, but the content quality was just so good, I didn't want to pass it up. So here we go. It's me sounding poorly as I talk with George B. Thomas, who's dropping a whole lot of really great ideas, concepts, and stories about how he's using social media to build his brand worldwide. Let's join the conversation in progress.
You know what made me call you to get you back on the podcast?
Do tell.
Okay, well, I follow you on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and, just about anywhere. But one day I saw this, I guess it's called a non-ribbon chord chart that showed relationships between the concept of inbound marketing and things like that. And I'm looking at it going, why would George post this? And I see inbound. I see a big kind of Jupiter inbound. I see a Saturn HubSpot. And then I'm looking and I go, hey, wait a minute. What's that Mars over there? That's George B. Thomas. So that's darn cool. I mean, because this is an audio podcast, I kind of need to describe it to listeners. It looks like a constellation of the universe, the Milky Way, right? So inbound marketing is the concept of inbound marketing is Jupiter. HubSpot's, I'm going to say Saturn. And then George B. Thomas is this growing Mars in the upper left corner of this chart. And I'm like, how cool is that? I mean, I'm going to quote your website that talks about how you're a high school dropout.
Yeah.
That when everyone else was trying to figure out their life, doing term papers, you were out there getting busy with the School of Hard Knocks version of that.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that. I mean, especially, how did you become the Mars in the constellation that is HubSpot and inbound marketing?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it was a surreal moment, this inbound 2019. And what's funny is there's other planets there. And I'll give you the screenshot. You can share it on the show notes. There's two other very important planets in what you're describing here. One is Brian Halligan, which is the CEO and co-founder of HubSpot itself, the company that has put on inbound for a lot of years, and Dharmesh Shah. And there's another co-founder. And so to sit back and look at this graphic and see that planet or blob of color be orange versus pink, be larger versus small, it was an absolute just crazy moment in life. And to kind of circle back around and answer your question, the way that this has happened, it's not sexy. It's just a lot of hard work. It's a lot of educating oneself, coming to the realization of always be learning, of the more you learn, the more you earn. And the more that you give back to a community, the more that they want to listen, as long as you're giving value. And so DP in 2012, which seems like a long time ago, and in internet years, it is a long time ago, I was a zero, absolute zero when it came to HubSpot, inbound marketing in general. I was a design development nerd. Give me a pizza, a 6-pack of Coke, and out comes a website, like that type of thing. And in 2012, we ended up going to our first inbound event. The company that I worked for, the owner and I won tickets to go to this event. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to become a marketer. I want to actually stand on stage and speak on stage. I want to add value. I had heard Gary Vaynerchuk speak at that event. And I'm like, I want to do that right there. And so we got back and I just started learning from HubSpot Academy, from other websites, from YouTube, and then just started creating content. Everything I would learn, I would turn around and teach. And it's just been this vicious cycle since 2012, 2013. to end up where we ended up with this year at Inbound 2019. And a little caveat to this too, that achievement was unlock DP, but another achievement that I don't know if for unlock my career again was that I actually was trending on Twitter in Boston while I was giving my talk. So that was like, just the whole thing was like, wow, I can't believe that I've gone from here to like here. And it's been an amazing journey, amazing ride.
Wow, that's like unlocking a plus 600 healing wand of greatness. I mean, oh my gosh, your D&D character.
Yeah, for sure. He's a wizard. He's a wizard.
He is a wizard, and I am sure he can take on a gelatinous cube all by himself. That's really, really impressive. And I want to hit on something you talked about. It's the sharing part. Because for listeners of the Nonfiction Brand podcast who listened to the first time we worked together on a podcast, I asked you a question about the videos that you put out. And it was a very simple question. And it was based on my experience, which is anyone out there? You know, you put it out there and you just don't know if there's an audience. And I remember your answer. In fact, I quote it all the time when I do presentations about George B. Thomas, this big star in the inbound universe. I asked him the very simple question of how many videos did you have to put out before you had an audience of anything other than crickets? And your answer was 75. And your follow-on answer was, and I'm glad no one listened to the first 50 because they were terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I tell that story and people laugh a little bit, but then they start taking notes because they're going, you mean I don't have to have an audience the first 5, the first 10, the first 50? No, you might not. Because people don't know you. You haven't optimized your notifications of, hey, I'm going live or I've got a new video. You got to figure all that stuff out unless you pay someone to do it for you. And I can tell from your website and how I know you that you are I'll figure it out myself guy.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's very important. Because here's what's fun about this is all of this journey DP was about HubSpot and how to do things inside of HubSpot, which is a marketing, sales, and service tool. And all the videos that I typically put out are around marketing or sales or the HubSpot tool. Now, think back about what we just talked about. At Inbound, I didn't give a talk that had anything to do with HubSpot. I did a talk that had to deal with one-to-one personalized video. Because of doing all these videos around HubSpot and engaging with the community around HubSpot, I've had to get really good at doing video myself. And because of being forced into being good or doing it myself, it actually leaned in and ended up being that's the talk at Inbound. That's what ended up trending. And so while everybody was like, yeah, he's the HubSpot guy, but we got to go see what he's going to talk about on this. It was through learning that got me there. So I think people need to just get in the trenches. There's something to be said, sure, about paying people to do things that you're just not good at. But there is something to be said about taking the time to become good at those things at which you're mediocre at. So, and you might have to unpack that a little bit in your own brain. But at the end of the day, if I started to create video and I couldn't get over the hump of editing or shooting, sure, I'm pay some money. But if I, in those 50 to 75 videos, see, you know what, actually, I'm getting this. I'm starting to understand it. This is a thing. And then you just trudge through it. Like there's magic that can happen out of those moments.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by Nonfiction Brandversity. It's a free Facebook group dedicated to the art and craft of personal branding. And we'd like to invite you. Just search Nonfiction Brandversity on Facebook and ask to join. You're in, guaranteed. I can't wait to see you on campus.
Well, a friend of mine and frequent guest of the podcast, Don Stanley, who's a professor of internet marketing, social media marketing at the University of Wisconsin-Madison here in Madison, he loves to do a presentation where he shows Gary Vaynerchuk, as he is today, professional production values, incredible stuff and blah. Then he'll show the very first Gary V wine library video, which is still up online. Now, I remember watching that very first Gary V wine library video because I think it was in Wired magazine that, hey, people are starting to do this stuff and take a look at this weird guy who's, talking about Merlot. And go search Gary Vaynerchuk, Vaynerchuk, Wine Library, and watch some of those early videos, and you'll go, oh my God, he was terrible. Yeah, he was terrible for a long, long time. And now he's global because he's worked out the bugs. He's developed his voice and style, and he's 100% authentic to who he is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things I like about you, George. I mean, I went to Social Media Marketing World in March of this past year, and I get there the night before the thing starts, and there's this drinks in the lobby of the Hyatt there, I think. And I walk in the door. First person I see is George B. I go, hey, George B. And he goes, DP. And, you know, we just reconnected the same way that we've done via podcast and in person, because the person that I've come to know is exactly the person I see on video and is exactly the person who's going to greet me as I walk in the lobby. And that to me is the essence of true nonfiction branding. You are exactly who you are. You know who you are, and you are being it on a daily basis. And that's incredibly cool. How did you get comfortable? And when did you recognize who you really are, and then be comfortable enough to actually be that, not only in person, but on camera?
Who said I'm still comfortable, or who said I am comfortable? I mean, I am comfortable in who I am. And it's funny because that conversation in itself could go really, really deep. Like, there are so many people who are out there that don't love themselves, that don't like who they are, that don't measure up to their own expectation. When you live in that place, it's really hard to be authentic. There's also another thing, DP, that happens when you get in front of a camera. Many people think they have to put on a mask or a persona, and all of a sudden it's like the radio DJ, right? It's, hey, WKRP. No, it's not. It's not any of that. It's realizing at some level that the camera is just an extension to the audience in which you're talking about. And so if you can look at the camera and you can imagine the actual human beings on the other side, and that you're talking to them, that you're not talking to a piece of tech, then it becomes very easy to just be yourself in front of the camera. But at the end of the day, you have to do some research and some understanding, or be self-aware of who you are and who you want to be unto the world. And so for me, I've always kind of known that I'm a happy-go-lucky dude, right? I know that I like to be helpful. I love to add value. I know that I have to be rooted in humility, because there have been times in my life where I was super egotistical. People thought I was the biggest dick ever, and I made bad choices in life because of ego. And so I knew that I wanted to be humble. And then this last little piece that is in kind of always in the play here is how to be most human, like how not to be a douchebag, how to greet somebody with a smile, how to leave them better than you found them. And so if you look at my personal speaking website, it literally talks about trainer, speaker, catalyst. Because at the end of the day, I want to be the catalyst for someone being able to go from where they're at to where they want to be. Because I've been on this journey of going from where I was to where I want to get to, which I have not yet even closely arrived to where I want to get, but I'm on the journey. And so having this self-awareness and what I'll call a personal compass, not a personal brand, but a personal compass of these 4 elements of what make up the authentic you are highly important. So for me, I just list them. It's being a happy, helpful, humble human, right? And it should roll off the tongue. You should know who you want to be. When I wake up in the morning, I want to be a happy, helpful, humble human. When I step in front of the camera, happy, helpful, humble human. If people come over to my house and we're out by my fireplace, happy, helpful, humble human. Go to bed, happy, helpful, humble human. Then you eat it, you drink it, you breathe it. It's just who you are. Now, that's not everybody. They might be like, well, I want to be funny, or I want to be professional, or I want to be empathetic, or I want to be strong. There's so many things that you can be, but you need to find 3 or 4 of those and build them into, and this is why I call it a compass, because it's happy, helpful, humble, human. The 4 directions of north, south, east, and west. If you get 4 things that you want to focus on and be, that's your brand compass. And you can just start to like eat it, drink it, live it, breathe it, be it. And it makes it so much easier, because it's not something that you need to turn on. It's just something that's always there guiding you.
Again, frequent listeners of the podcast will hear me hammer over and over again a concept I call the key 3, which is very much your 4 cardinal directions on your compass, if you will, except 3 instead of 4. Why? Because, 1, 2, 3, it's a series. It's easier to remember for some people, certainly me. And, you're happy, humble human. That for me is creative, collaborative, and provocative. Those, if I'm not those 3 things, don't talk to me. And if you want something that's not those 3 things, don't talk to me. And if you're cool with that stuff, come talk to me. And let's really rock the jams out, if you will. Once you know that, you can say to the entire world, hey, this is who I am. If you don't like that, that's cool. You can find someone else who's different. This is who I am. And you attract the right people.
Hey, nonfiction branders, did you know I wrote a book? Well, I did, and it's called Rotoma, the ROI of social media top of mind. I wrote it with my colleague Spencer X. Smith, and it's all about Rotoma, an acronym that means Return on Top of Mind Awareness. Best-selling author and NYU Stern School of Business professor Scott Galloway called it a book that starches the fluff from social media and helps managers allocate capital and find the unicorn among unicorns, ROI. And Chief Content Officer at Marketing Profs, Ann Handley said, this isn't just a practical way to think about the return on social media, it's also a spot-on, accurate way to reframe your social efforts. Check out all the 5-star reviews on Amazon by searching Rotoma, Rotoma. Pick up your copy today and start building your personal, professional, and small business brand the Rotoma way.
Chris Ducker, who's an acquaintance of both of ours, loves to talk about market like a magnet, attract the best and repel the rest. He's a Brit, so do a bad British accent for that. But it's that concept of attract the right type of people, the right type of business, the right type of projects, the ones who, when they get an invoice from you, are happy to pay it because you've provided them exactly what they wanted, plus a whole lot more, as opposed to the ones who get the invoice and go, I don't think what you did deserves that amount. Well, I don't need to discuss that. I don't need you. I need more of the people who get me and are happy to engage with me the way I am. And George, you are the way you are, man. But I want to point out, especially to listeners, you've got some brand graphic palette, logo-y stuff going on that allows people to recognize you from 100 yards away.
Yeah.
What are the things that you are definitely part of your brand that you put into your lifestyle so that people can go, George B. from 100 yards away?
Yeah. So let me dive into that, but I do want to go back to something you were talking about there because I think it's really important for the listeners to understand. One of the elements that you have to get really comfortable with is what you were talking about of understanding not everybody's going to like me. And you got to be really good at being okay with that. Like, just realize that everything you're putting out is for the people who will come to you, and know that you're going to have those trolls and haters, but also have a plan of attack or a plan of engagement for when those moments happen, that you don't lose your direction, that your compass is still your focus, even with the people who might have issues with you. Now, let me dive into this whole brand thing. And it's really interesting because consistency is the word that I just want to throw out there first. You've got to be consistent with the things that we're about to talk about. So number one thing is my hair, right? So I either in a peak in the front or I have a full frohawk going, but people recognize the hair. And I didn't used to think it was a thing, but when I shaved my head one time and the internet almost exploded, it was crazy. Like, I was getting direct messages of like, no, what did you do? My kids were freaking out. My wife was like, I hate it. So the hair came back, right? And it's always been consistent for, 3-4 years now. That's been the hairdo. The other thing is there's always like orange. My color is orange. People know that I love orange, the orange wall. People know that I love superheroes, Marvel Comics, DC Comics, because there's that stuff in my videos. People who pay attention to the micros always realize that in most of my videos, I'm wearing glasses. I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I'm wearing beads on one of my wrists. They're always there. In my thumbnails, I'll have my thumb up. So it's just this representation, human, that is part of this video. And then there's just the brand of Sprocket Talk. And now it used to be another brand, which was a podcast. But through being a transition specialist and moving companies and starting over again, now we've got the Sprocket Talk brand. And even in what we're doing right now, I'm wearing a Sprocket Talk t-shirt, right? I've got on the back board there, join Sprocket Talk, right? And I'm not pointing that out to point it out because I want to. It's because you're asking about brand elements. That's the only reason I'm pointing that out. Otherwise, it would just sit back there and it'd be super quiet. And you as a viewer would be like, I wonder what Sprocket Talk is. And you would go Google Sprocket Talk, come to sprockettalk.com, and you would realize that through these years of giving back and adding value, we've taken what was, let's just put some videos on YouTube, let's just podcasts, to holy crap, they built an entire educational platform for people who are HubSpot users or want to learn these things that George is creating videos and Impulse Creative is creating videos and Remington Begg is creating videos about. Like there's a home base now. And all of these little pieces add up, right? And what's crazy, DP, and I say this humbly because it's not out of ego, but it's out of like, holy crap, how did we end up here? You jokingly said people yell out George B. When we were in Boston for Inbound 2019, people were yelling out Remington Begg, George B. Dude, we even got some Sprocket dudes and Sprocket mans yelled at us as we were walking down the road. And it's because of this consistent element of the t-shirt swag, the thumbnails, the orange background, the superheroes, the happy, helpful, humble human, the value that you're adding to a niche community. Well, they're not so niche anymore, but around HubSpot, right? And that just makes it where it becomes this like powerful piece. And I do want to say there's one other element that I think is important, because even people outside of the HubSpot ecosystem, so if you think of social media marketing world and you think of the speakers there, I had one speaker come up to me and he goes, dude, I got to tell you something. I've talked to a lot of people and there has not been, and again, I say this humbly, there has not been one person who has had one bad thing to say about you as a human being. That's my brand. I'm pausing on purpose. That's my brand. Like, there are so many things that you can turn and say about any other brand in a negative. And by the way, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but brands have to work really hard on the way that people feel about them and what they're doing.
I totally get that, because I'm guessing when people meet you, you get a lot of, oh my God, you're just like the videos.
Yes.
Oh my God, you're just like this stuff I've seen you do. Oh my God, you're just like the presentation I just saw. And that's because you're consistent. Again, using the word that you hammered in right away when we started talking, you're consistent by the way you greet people, by the way you work with them, by the way you introduce them. You're a happy, humble human, across the board, and people get what they see. And what happens when a brand actually delivers what they promise? Build a relationship, not just a transaction. I'm an Apple guy. I see you're an Apple guy too. Apple has my love and also a certain amount of my money buying their stock. I care so much about that brand because it's the first brand that I personally felt I had a human connection with. They could be better about that. They aren't perfect, but I know they're going to get there because they care. Boom. That's what a brand's all about. I'm just going to describe what I'm looking at, which is a vivid orange wall with a couple of shelves on there with, it looks like, the Marvel action figures of Hulk, Iron Man, and Captain America. There's a picture of that whole crew. There's a little marquee that says join Sprocket Talk. There are a couple of other, is that Aquaman? Is that Aquaman over there?
He's the only DC character in the mix, but that's because when I was growing up, he was my favorite. And so I have him over to the side. And by the way, you can't see the bottle, but the bottle is a soda, and it's Mighty Mouse soda. I'm just going to throw that out there. Oh, my
gosh. Well, anyway, you get a feel just by watching at this thing, and then, or just you get a feeling of what George is like just by looking at the back wall. And then you see a smiling face, you see his spiked up hair, you see his gray shirt with Sprocket Talk on it. And by the way, I got my NONFICTION Brand Versity shirt, brands say cultures do, on for the same darn reason. Because, to be honest with you, George, I've been going to school on you. I've been watching what you do, and how you do it. I was already on the consistency, brand alignment, know who you are train, but you're really great at automation and making the most of the tools that are out there. And frankly, I want to touch base on that a little bit, but we're going a little bit long on this half of the episode because, again, this is going to be 2 episodes consecutively with George B. Thomas of Sprocket Talk and also of Impulse Creative. Where are you guys located?
Yeah, Impulse Creative is located in the Fort Myers, Florida area. I'm located in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. So #remote life.
Well, and the whole thing is when you build your brand big enough, people will have zero problem with that. Remote works fantastically when you're a brand. It's terrible when you're a cog in their machine. They want you to be there in their machine. Unless you're a brand and they're going, yeah, but you do such great stuff. They aren't buying video. They're buying George B. to do the video. And there's a huge difference. And we're going to talk about that because you've got a brand new course that came out on personal video one-on-one. We're going to talk about that in next week's episode. So make sure to check it out. George, what would you like to promote in this week's episode?
You know, here's the thing. If you just want to kind of to know us, because next episode I'll talk about the course, but head over to YouTube, check out our Sprocket Talk channel. You're going to find out that we talk about some things outside of HubSpot, but a lot of things, sales, marketing, and service, and HubSpot. Check out the sprockettalk.com website. Those 2 places will be where you can kind of get your feet wet. And then if you want more of me as just a human being, hey, you can connect with me on Facebook. It's Mr.GeorgeBThomas. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @GeorgeBThomas. And of course, we can start a conversation because I love the relationships over just trying to drive revenue.
Well, and that's what I love about George B. Thomas. And I'm so thankful to have you on the podcast. That's it for this week. But check it out next week because we're going to talk about some really cool new developments in your life that I'm going to kind of ambush you about. I'm DP Knudten for the NonFiction Brand podcast, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.